What's up, everybody? Welcome into yet another edition of the Baseline Jumper podcast. Oh, that line never gets old. My name is Jason Goldstein, and on the line with me right now is a man who was really late to our prep call because he was too busy looking at the Los Angeles Lakers center depth chart and authors coming to Pittsburgh. My partner and former friend, Ben McDonald, because we're in a fight right now. Ben, speak.
I'm so sorry, Jason. I'll never be late again. No, but you're right. I was late today for our prep call. Jason is never late. He's a very punctual man. Two things you'll learn about Jason: lots of charisma, loves basketball, and now number three comes in today, hates people who are late. And now I have to make it up to him by letting him talk for 20 minutes about Joseph Tsai and the Brooklyn Nets.
Yeah, you know what, Ben? That's actually a great idea. Let's outline the show for the people. We'll kind of give you a what's on the menu here on Baseline Jumper. First, we have the DeMarcus Cousins injury, which we'll get into first. We have some pros and cons for both Cousins and the Lakers. We have a nice little story about what the rookies think, who amongst themselves who will have the best career. We have our bets segment. I think that should be the intro for Best Bets from now on, but we're doing the most improved tonight. And then, of course, we'll end with our Nets news of the week and a little Team USA talk. Ben, what do you think of that?
I love it. I think we need to put an intro song for our best bets. You just gave me a brilliant idea. We could put a little Pink Floyd Money. There's a lot of potential songs that go in. We might have to ask the people what they want for an intro song for our segment.
I think it's going to be my terrible Super Mario impression when I couldn't get the words out. Usually it's about halfway through the show when I stop learning how to speak, but tonight it's in the first 3 minutes. So
yeah, I mean, alcohol's a hell of a drug, so it is what it is. Anyway, moving on. We're going to move first and foremost. Unless you want to hit the Nets first, we have one rather large NBA story outside of the Nets this week, which is DeMarcus Cousins' injury. And there's a lot to unpack here, Jason. This is a guy who really, just a few short years ago, with the Pelicans and the Kings, was one of the top players in the league. Many considered him to be one of the very best players in the entire league, a guy who you could build a team around. And now, Jason, there's a lot of confusion. So the word is that he's torn his ACL, and that means he could miss the entire season. He's on another prove-it deal with the Lakers. I mean, Jason, what do you make of this injury, and what does this mean for Cousins' career?
Well, when I first saw the push notification that Cousins hurt his knee, I'm like, oh, God, this can't be good. Because this man has already suffered through one of the worst possible injuries an NBA player could suffer through, which is the Achilles. Now, most likely a torn ACL. He's going to be lost for the entire season. I just really feel for the guy. He worked his tail off, signed in Golden State, thought he was a shoo-in to win another championship, ends up missing most of that season, comes back in the finals, wasn't healthy to play at his best potential. Then he signs back with the Los Angeles Lakers, gets to reunite with Anthony Davis, play alongside LeBron James, another chance to compete for a championship. And the basketball gods just ripped it away from him. It's very unfortunate.
It's very true, and it really makes you wonder what this is going to mean for his career, because he's a large man, Jason. He is a big fella, and that, quite frankly, makes these injuries even worse, because when you have a guy who's that size, it just makes it that much more difficult to recover. And it's going to be really tough for him to regain that quickness. There was a great article the day that came out, that he had hurt his ACL, he'd torn it, and they showed some of these highlights from when he was on the Kings. And I have to say, Jason, I couldn't believe it was the same player. It was weird. It was only a few years ago, and yet it just looked like a totally different guy. And I just couldn't believe it. I mean, he was just so quick. He had those killer crossovers, and you forget what a good perimeter player he was. And it's just a bummer. I mean, this is such a great basketball player, and to see him miss so much of the last few seasons, it's tough. And it just kind of bums you out. So I hope that he's able to come back at full strength. But I mean, the other part of this, Jason, if we're going to look really at just the next season, this is a big loss for the Lakers potentially. They were depending on him a lot more than I think you would have expected, given the fact that they have two of the best players. But he was going to be a crucial cog. And I'm curious, Jason. I mean, what do you think this means for the Lakers as far as losing him for potentially the entire season?
Well, first, I'm going to go out on a limb and say I feel like DeMarcus Cousins' career is over. And I'm usually more of an optimist on this podcast, but when you have the Achilles injury, you come back from that, but you lose a lot of your athleticism. And then you add a torn ACL to boot. I mean, he's trying to come back in the summer of 2020. What team is going to give him a contract knowing that he's already suffered two of the most gruesome injuries in basketball? So, I mean, I wish him well. I wish him the best. I hope he comes back and is able to salvage what's left of his career. But this is not a good sign. Those injuries, I think it's over for Cousins, man. But as far as the Lakers, it is a big hit because, you hear all this talk about Anthony Davis wanting to play the bulk of his minutes at the four. I know LeBron spent some time there. They may be playing Kyle Kuzma at the four a little bit. But, the starting five job in LA was DeMarcus Cousins. Now you're relying on a guy like JaVale McGee, and they're looking at bringing in a couple of former All-Stars off the scrap heap to come in and potentially start. The Lakers went from rebuilding, we have all these number 2 draft picks, to win now mode with Anthony Davis and LeBron James. I mean, let's talk about a couple of these names that they're allegedly having for a group workout in Los Angeles. Okay, Dwight Howard, who's technically under contract with the Grizzlies, even though they've given him permission to look elsewhere for an NBA job. He's got a $5.6 million expiring deal that he could end up, being flipped to LA in exchange for a draft pick if the Lakers even have any left. Then moving further down the list, and we'll get back to Dwight, but Joakim Noah, I mean, I thought his days in the NBA were over. I can't picture him coming in and playing major minutes for the Lakers. And then Mo Spates, who you remember being a veteran on those early Golden State championship teams, is another guy in there. I mean, out of those three, if you're Rob Pelinka, who you giving a contract to?
Can I say a mystery name I didn't put in the show notes just because I wanted to surprise you?
Yes.
How about Marc Gasol?
So didn't we say that on our free agency show? I said that Lowry could end up going to the Lakers and Gasol to the Clippers. So you really think Marc Gasol has a chance to play in LA? Would Toronto give him up for cents on the dollar?
I mean, the thing is, if you're Toronto, you could ask for an awful lot from the Lakers to get Gasol, and Gasol is really an absolutely perfect fit on this team. I mean, they could get a real asset for Gasol. I mean, the Lakers don't have much, but they could pretty much ask for whatever they'd like. I mean, I wonder if the Raptors offered I mean, I just don't know how you could make the money work. But if they could somehow offer them Lowry and Gasol, I think the Lakers would happily give up. I mean, maybe not happily, but I think they'd be willing to trade Kuzma in that type of deal.
I
I
don't
just
think so.
don't know how they get the
No,
salaries to match.
I don't think so. For trading up Kyle Kuzma, and it was so important to keep him out of the Anthony Davis trade for two expiring past their prime former All-Stars, I don't see that happening. Maybe one of them comes at the trade deadline, but I think Dwight Howard's the guy. I really do. He's been in LA before. He gets one last chance to play meaningful NBA minutes. I don't see Noah happening. I don't see Spates happening. I don't see JaVale McGee as the starter. I think Dwight Howard will ultimately be the guy. I know he had some health issues, but, with LeBron James in his ear, he may actually cause him to play at his best. Didn't work with Kobe, but it might work with LeBron. They're closer in age. They were friends. They spent time on all-star teams together. They spent time in the Olympics together. So my money's on Dwight Howard getting out of Memphis and going to the Lakers.
Yeah, I mean, I think if I had to choose out of those guys, I think the guy who I think would be the best fit would be a guy like Noah, just because he's still a very good defender. He can still switch. He's a good passer, and he's someone who will accept his role. I would not want to get Dwight Howard just because he really hasn't shown the ability to be part of a team. I mean, that's been the biggest problem, and when you're the number one or number two or number three guy, that's tolerable. when you're the 8th or ninth guy, it's tough to have that guy be a locker room pain because I mean really he's just not worth the trouble anymore. So I think that's tough. I mean, as I said, I think the ideal would be to get Gasol, but I don't see a way that they can make that deal work within the constraints of what they have. If they had a way to get the salaries of Lowry and Gasol onto their books for the Lakers, I think I'd take that deal, but there's just no way to do it. The combined salaries of those two players is about $60 million.
Yeah, and
The
you're not
Lakers just
trading
don't have
Danny
them.
Green back to the Raptors. Rondo's not going to want to go there. There's no way these
I,
salaries match up.
I mean, even if you traded Danny Green and literally the entire rest of the roster, it doesn't. It barely even gets close. I think maybe if you traded literally every player besides LeBron and Davis, you might be there, but that's not legal per the NBA trade rules. So, I mean, I don't think it's possible, but I mean, if they could find a way to get Gasol, it's just hard for me to believe that they would give up Kuzma if they're only getting Gasol back. And
No, it's not happening.
I think if they got both, that there would be a chance, but I don't think that's possible anyway. So I don't know. We might have to wait to see how the season progresses, but let's look at some kind of pros and cons. I mean, I think there's some obvious cons here, right? I mean, we already talked about a little bit, JaVale McGee coming. They're very thin, and frankly, I think that this pushes them even closer in some ways to being a team that if they get an injury or two, they really could be right on the cusp of that playoff picture. I mean, they just don't have much depth, Jason, and I really think people may be underselling how important that is for this team, especially with a very, very competitive West. But let's look at some of the pros, Jason. So I think there are actually some pros. Some of these are a little sarcastic. Others are not so much. What did you think? I mean, are there any things that you think are good for the Lakers out of this?
I think Kyle Kuzma's situation, he becomes that third scorer. I mean, he kind of already was, even though Cousins is capable of carrying an offense, for 10, 12-minute stretches. So Kuzma is a bona fide number 3 on that team. He's going to get a lot of minutes, and that could end up getting him a nice contract at the end of his rookie scale. But other than that, there are no pros. I mean, you hit the nail on the head. The Lakers were thin as it is. They ended up signing a lot of B-minus and C-level free agents after, they waited on Kawhi Leonard. And they very well could miss the playoffs if things don't go their way or if LeBron or Anthony Davis miss any sort of significant time. They might be able to scrape by with McGee as the starting center, only because with the amount of double teams that both LeBron and Davis command, he's going to be the recipient of a ton of lobs, and he's going to score 10 points a game around the basket as long as he can, stay out of trouble. So, but other than that, I'm really not finding too many pros. You have any pros on this?
I mean, Jason, there's one obvious pro. Your guy, the dancing bear, the best center to come out of St. Petersburg, Russia, former Laker great, bestowed upon a great large contract. Timothy Mozgov's coming back to LA, guys. I mean, get excited if you're a Lakers fan.
Stop it, please.
but
Mitch
seriously,
Kupchak, if he ever lands at LAX, will get met by the paparazzi saying, "What are you doing back here for paying this man $64 million 3 summers ago?" Absolutely no way. Do you have a real pro for me, or
I
do I
do.
make this argument?
I do. I think there's one thing that's really beneficial out of this, actually, that I actually stopped for a second and I said, if they're healthy, this might actually have them win more games this year. And the reason why is that Davis has professed his absolute hatred for playing the center position. He has made it very clear across his entire career he does not see himself as a center. And LeBron is not a very big fan of playing the 4. Neither is Kuzma. With Cousins on the team, it meant Davis was going to start at the 4, LeBron was probably going to start at the 1, and Kuzma was going to start at the 3, which is a lot of size and not a lot of shooting, not a great defensive team at this point in LeBron's career. Now, we are suddenly going to get to see a lot more of Davis at the 5, LeBron at the 4, and also, Jason, kind of an underrated subplot, is this is going to mean there's going to be a lot more